The enduring humanitarian crisis, however, also strains these relationships. So the relationships between IDP communities and host communities that then live in the same space. And this is especially clear in the struggle to access land. And there again, environmental factors come in as well, that there's less and less farmable land available due to desertification and due to displacement further south. So this is a factor actually straining the relationships. The second main negative coping mechanism that I kind of observed in my research was survival sex work, especially in urban centers and humanitarian zones and in camps for displaced persons. And part of this is also sexual exploitation and abuse, meaning that, for instance, the volunteers that the Burkina Ministry for Social Action recruits to distribute certain humanitarian aid and emergency relief are sometimes implicated or accused to be implicated in extortion of sexual favors in exchange for emergency aid. And this is something that Mariam Sawadogo, Burkina Faso Bureau Chief for Search for Common Ground, also confirmed, because this man, so in this case, for instance, the volunteer who comes to distribute food is the one who has the power. Internally displaced persons may feel forced to engage in sexual favors or survival sex work, in fact, in order to secure their survival. And this, of course, has lasting effects on internally displaced communities. Apart from the physiological and psychological trauma, there's also, again, stigma associated, as we spoke about before, to sex outside of marriage or survival sex work and rape. It may result in unwanted pregnancies or the transmission of STDs. And the issue is especially that these effects will last beyond the period of displacement, possibly. So when a person is able to maybe return to their home village because the security situation has improved, then these sorts of effects and the stigma associated with them may prevent the person to be fully reintegrated into their home community. In fact, the community with which they were displaced may decide not to take them along because of this. And then the third aspect is kind of the way decisions are made in internally displaced communities, and especially the gendered aspects of decision making. So because of the crisis, we've seen a huge rise in female-headed households. This is because men and boys are often targeted, killed by armed groups, primarily killed. And this is something that we can also consider as a form of gender-based violence. So the targeted killing of men and boys who may be seen as threatening to non-state armed groups or more threatening in kind of a security context. And although we've seen this rise in female-headed households, so households where a woman is responsible for the day-to-day affairs, this continued exclusion, this still indicates a continued exclusion from decision-making structures and meetings, for instance, in internally displaced camps. So the sort of more traditional gender roles of hierarchies between men and women in society then do not fully adapt to this new context of women actually having more power in a certain way in displaced families. Humanitarian actors are trying to counteract this trend and have, for instance, set up protection committees in campsites that consist of 5 male and female representatives from the displaced community and that kind of take decisions together. But it still remains to be seen whether those structures can also replace kind of more informal decision-making mechanisms. This also brings us to the question of gendered mobility. So when a community decides that they want to send someone home to the home village, despite it being impossible to return for everyone, they often decide to send women or girls, especially because of what we talked about before, the targeted killing of men and boys as a gendered form of violence. And this is where the kind of title of the paper comes from as well. The idea that it is better to get raped than to be killed in this context, which of course does in no way mean that displaced communities don't take both forms of violence extremely seriously. It just is more to kind of point out the absolutely impossible dilemmas that displaced communities go through, and the way that gender affects the decision that is being made of who risks their life or their safety or their well-being in what kind of way. Women in this context, however, aren't powerless, completely powerless at all. There's solidarity among displaced women that, for instance, create self-help organizations and businesses in their host villages or on their campsites as well, and support each other. Also support each other from, for instance, the abuse of other people in that community. And then the last point I wanted to just briefly highlight is the question of women combatants, because in the context of internal displacement, we often hear, the term women and children. About 80% of people displaced in Burkina, internally displaced, are women and children. But do we presume a sort of innocence of women right away? And is that helpful in this context? Or should we look more clearly also at how women, for instance, might be involved in combat action, might be involved in non-state armed groups, as, for instance, was the case in the Sahel massacre in June 2021. So how can we kind of work around gendered presumptions of power and powerlessness and understand how gender actually works in this context? And that, of course, also means going beyond the binary of men and women and understanding more clearly how gender is a social relation between different groups that gives different forms of powers to them. Now I'm going to try and do a French summary of this. So, alors on a parlé du Burkina où au début 2019, il y avait 50 000 personnes déplacées internes. Et on voit maintenant qu'il y a en fait 1 150 000 personnes déplacées internes. Alors une augmentation extrême pendant les 3 dernières années. Et le genre joue un rôle extrêmement important dans ces dynamiques de déplacement récents. Il y a par exemple la stigmatisation des survivantes et survivants du viol, qui existait avant la crise du déplacement, mais a été exacerbée par ses effets. Il n'y a pas beaucoup de dénonciations parce qu'en fait, il y a une honte sociale associée à dénoncer qui met même pas juste le survivant ou la survivante à risque, mais toute sa famille, tout son village, toute la communauté dans certains cas. Alors, la stigmatisation du viol, c'est vraiment un effet relationnel et ça pourrait aussi avoir des conséquences négatives. Par exemple, au futur, pour le mariage, une personne violée sera probablement pas capable de marier quelqu'un à cause de cette stigmatisation associée au viol. Et c'est un grand problème pour des familles, des personnes déplacées pour qui le mariage est le principal filet de sécurité sociale à cause d'une absence des services de base de l'État. En plus, la dénonciation n'est pas souvent faite parce qu'il y a une manque de confidentialité quand quelqu'un décide de dénoncer et un système judiciaire qui est défaillant. Finalement, il y a 2 grands aspects, grands mécanismes d'adaptation négatifs basés sur le genre. La première, c'est l'augmentation des mariages précoces et forcés, qui a aussi souvent une fonction de renforcer les relations entre les personnes déplacées et les communautés d'accueil. Alors, ce n'est pas juste une question de pratique culturelle. Et finalement, ces liens sont encore plus importants maintenant, quand après un certain nombre d'années de la crise, l'accès à la terre, par exemple, est un grand point de conflit entre communautés hautes et communautés déplacées. Deuxièmement, le sexe pour la survie est aussi en train d'augmenter dans les centres urbains, les zones humanitaires et les camps. Et c'est même des fois des personnes qui sont impliquées dans l'aide humanitaire ou qui travaillent en fait dans les zones humanitaires, qui exploitent des personnes déplacées internes, ce qui s'appelle l'exploitation et abus sexuels. Le sexe pour la survie a des effets durables, par exemple le traumatisme physique et psychologique, aussi les grossesses non désirées et des MST. Mais la stigmatisation encore est un grand problème parce que la personne qui a performé qui était impliquée dans le sexe pour la survie, par exemple, elle pourrait être pas capable de rentrer chez elle quand la situation est améliorée, parce que peut-être sa communauté ne va pas lui permettre de la joindre. Et finalement, la prise de décision est aussi mieux comprise si on parle d'un prisme de genre. Par exemple, les femmes chefs de ménage, on en voit beaucoup plus maintenant au Burkina, parce qu'il y a notamment les hommes et les garçons qui sont tués par les groupes armés. Mais encore, ces femmes chefs de ménage sont souvent exclues des structures décisionnelles et des réunions dans les camps. En plus, la question de mobilité est une question de genre parce que c'est souvent les femmes qui sont envoyées pour aller chercher des biens du village d'origine et qui risquent donc le viol. Mais comme l'avait dit un des personnes que j'ai interviewées, mieux vaut être violé que tué. Alors, c'est vraiment une décision absolument impossible qui est prise par les communautés déplacées. Quand même, il y a de la solidarité entre femmes déplacées et entre femmes déplacées qui organisent, par exemple, des entreprises ou des organisations d'entraide entre elles. Puis je voudrais finir en disant qu'il est important de considérer le genre vraiment comme une relation au Burkina aussi, et une relation de déplacement entre différents groupes sociaux. Ça veut dire que les femmes ne sont pas du tout justement des victimes ou des survivantes dans ce contexte, mais il y a aussi la question des femmes combattantes et la violence qui est un produit du genre de cette relation et qui essaie de ne pas se limiter en fait au rôle traditionnel ou aux essentialistes, comme le montre le massacre de Solane en juin 2021. Alors, merci beaucoup et j'ai très envie de savoir ce que vous pensez. Et thank you very much for your questions.
Thank you very much, Josephine, for the wonderful presentation. Dear participants, if you have any question or anything that you'd like to ask Josephine and other panelists, please think about your questions and we'll give you the floor later. Now I hand over the floor to Daniel.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. This is Daniel Uzuku. I'm going to discuss with you on children affected by displacement and their right to legal identity in Mali. I think that this is a fundamental question. This research was conducted regarding the gap of research that's focused on this specific issue. So I read many papers that talked about the displacement issue in Mali, but little focus was put on the case of children. So I decided to have a closer look on this issue in order to ring the bell and to raise the question to in the international community and also the policymakers so that they can pay attention to the plights of children regarding the fundamental rights. So, so this is the overview of my presentation. First, I have a few introduction. I discuss the challenges to access a legal entity, and I will put focus on internal displaced children and also repatriated refugee children, and I will make some recommendation regarding the necessary policy action that the local authorities should take to address this issue. Discussing this topic, let's underline that the crisis, the 2012 crisis, conducted mass displacements in 2012. As you can see on these charts, you have one peak here during the crisis in 2013. You are almost 355 million displaced. And you have another peak in 2021. So almost 400,000 people displaced. So among these displaced people, we have 43% of those displaced are children under 18. Let me underscore that this is one of the huge displacement facts, but the very first displacement took place in 1962 when the founding father Modibo Keita quelled the Tuareg revolutionary movement. So this is where the displacement issue started. And after that, we have some military coup. I hope that you remember the military coup of Moussa Traoré in 1968. Another military coup occurred in 1991 during the first wave of democratization process. And a decade later, we had another military coup in 2012 with that brought that flux of displacement. And today, the country is under the rule of the junta. So this is to say that Mali is a very fragile country, very unstable country with complex humanitarian crises in the country. So in this circumstance, I think that where there is displacement and there is I think the rights of people can be jeopardized. This is why it is important to reflect on the legal identity issue for children, because this is a fundamental right. It's the rights from which we have rights. I saw that Germain presented the key challenges that are confronting IDPs, and among the challenges, he didn't put too much attention to legal identity issue, but I believe that this is a critical issue for children. So by legal identity, I mean the basic characteristic of individual's identity, including name, sex, place, and date of birth conferred through registration and issuance of birth certificate by an authorized civil registration authority. And based on this definition, we can say that a child who is not registered does not legally exist. Yeah. My research finding indicate that forcibly internal displaced children and repatriated refugee children face various challenges, including distance to the nearest registration office, lack of knowledge on how to register childbirth, fees associated to late registration, and legal barriers. You have some sources like UNICEF sources that indicate that 90% of children are registered. This is true, but this figure can be fluttering because we know that the population is concentrated in the South. And in the North, there is another dynamics there. But children that are facing resistance issue are in the center and the North of the country where the area is really fragile. And UNICEF conducted in 2014 a robust assessment regarding children that are not registered. So UNICEF identified 120,000 people or children that are not registered. So this is critical for people living in fragile areas of the center and northern regions. So regarding the case, regarding children, we have many categories of children, okay? Within internal displaced children, we have children born in the sites, the displacement site. We are also children who came with their parents, and based on the law, we have many orientation on how this category of children can access the legal identity. But I will not shed light on this category. I just took two categories: internally displaced children and the repatriated children. So for these people, internally displaced children, there is the fact of distance. Let me underline that during the crisis, many registration facilities were looted by armed groups. So today, if the parents have the will to register the children, it can be difficult for them because of the distance. In the past, we can have the secondary offices where parents can register their children, but today, because of crisis, the facilities, the offices have moved to the main towns. And parents today cannot pay to come to the town for registration issue. Because of lack of funding and economic power, we have also the fees associated to the late registration. You know that in Mali, the parents are 30 days to register their children, to make the declaration of the children. If this 30-day pass, we have, based on the law, parents should follow a complex process to register their children. So in this process, the fee remain a roadblock for parents. That at the mayor office, there is a fee that we call the certificate of non-registration that costs $2. And there are some discrepancies regarding the cost of the documents. So these costs can go up to $30 per child. And you know that in Mali community, we have many children, at least 5 or 6 children per household. How a parent who has missed the registration of his children pay $30 or $90 for his children. If they are 3, you have 5. So this is a concern. I think that Alvin will discuss about the economic issue, and it will shed more light on the economic situation of IDPs. Regarding there are many reasons, many barriers, but I just highlight a few. Regarding repatriated refugees, today, among the repatriated people, we have children represent 40%. 40%. This is an important number. For these children, the main hindrance is legal barrier. Based on the domestic law called the Code des Personnes et la Famille, the Code of People and the Family provide that the Malian children born in foreign countries should either be registered in the host countries' registries or within Malian embassies and consulates. You can refer to the article 109, and this article can refer to them. 191 and 195. So how can we imagine that people who do not benefit from the protection of the country can afford to go to the embassy to apply to the civil documentation? I think that this law is not a specific law. So this law was adopted in normal time because this law was developed during humanitarian and crisis. We cannot imagine that the legislator can say that, okay, if those who are born in foreign countries should go to the embassy to apply for the civil documentation. This is not adapted to the situation. And based on our research, there are many barriers there are many reasons why the IDPs cannot go to the domestic register in the foreign country to apply. There are many reasons for that. I think that during the discussion, people will raise questions. I share more light. So my recommendation that the Malian government should take necessary steps to adopt the moratorium drafted by the direction of civil status. So there is a moratorium that we drafted, and we advise the government to give us a derogation for 2 years so that NGOs and care providers, aid workers can assist children. And the moratorium requested that the government lifts the procedure of supplementary judgment. This is the procedure that applies when during the late registration. So we ask the government to do that. And the second recommendation is the domestication of the Kampala Convention. David talked about that. This is a fundamental, because in the Kampala Convention, there are some provisions that address the issue of displaced children. You know, in the Malian legal framework, children cannot register anywhere that they want. if you should register where you are born. So today, if the place where you are born is under siege or under the control of armed groups, how can you proceed to do that? This is why we ask for the domestication of Kampala Convention that address specifically this issue. And I requested the government to establish a special commission on IDPs and repatriate issue. I think that we have to have a closer look on this situation, because the risk is that those children that since 2012, they have now at least 18 years now that the crisis is ongoing. So if something is not done and children do not go to school, they are not employed, lack of employment, this issue can be easy recruited. They can be easily recruited by armed groups, by jihadist armed groups. This is the risk. This is why it is an urgent question that the aid workers and the government
Daniel,
and what vision so that they can address it, promote the children's rights. Thanks so much. Je vais juste quelque chose en français parce que le document est en anglais. Je pense qu'il y a certains qui ont posé des questions. Je suis déjà arrivé à mon temps, mais je vais quand même aller à l'intérieur. Alors, le déplacement forcé au Mali, j'ai indiqué qu'il y a beaucoup de recherches qui sont faites sur la situation des déplacés forcés au niveau du Mali. Certains écrivent sur les femmes, d'autres écrivent sur les situations économiques qui disent et là. Mais il n'y a pas d'analyse, de réflexion sur le cas spécifique des enfants déplacés et des enfants rapatriés. Donc, moi, je me suis inséré dans ce créneau-là pour regarder de près la situation de l'accès à l'identité juridique pour les enfants. Et en regardant cet aspect, j'ai vu qu'il y a beaucoup d'enfants qui ne peuvent pas être enregistrés pour des questions de distance parce que la plupart des déplacés sont dans les zones centre-nord où la sécurité n'est pas de mise. Donc, la distance pour aller à la mairie est un problème. Il y a aussi les frais engagés. Les parents ne peuvent pas se permettre le luxe de payer 15 000, 30 000 francs pour pouvoir accéder à un jugement supplétif de leurs enfants. Alors, ce que je recommande dans cette situation, c'est que le gouvernement puisse adopter le moratoire qui a été rédigé par la Direction nationale de l'État civil et qui propose un moratoire, qui propose une dérogation sur la procédure de jugement supplétif pour 2 ans, de sorte que les acteurs humanitaires puissent les prendre en compte et les enregistrer. En tout cas, les assister pour qu'ils puissent obtenir des documents. J'ai demandé aussi la domestication de la Convention de Kampala parce que la loi à laquelle je fais référence, notamment le code de la protection de la famille, le code des personnes de la famille, n'adresse pas cette question. Il faut une loi spécifique à la situation des déplacés pour pouvoir adresser. Et la Convention de Kampala prescrit des lignes et je souhaite que ce soit comme. Alors, je demande aussi la mise en place d'une commission spéciale qui va regarder de près les questions des enfants déplacés internes et des enfants rapatriés, parce que les enfants rapatriés courent le grave risque d'être apatrides si rien n'est fait. Merci.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for this excellent presentation. And it's very insightful and informative. Thank you. I now hand over the floor to Alvin.
Thank you so much, Habib. Again, apologies, my internet is not good enough. We have power outages here. It's very rampant here in Sudan. So if you may allow me, I may switch off my video just to improve the quality of the discussion. But first, let me try to share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, as has been said by earlier panelists, the internal displacement challenges in the Sahel region are numerous. So one of them is unavailability of information. We are talking here of a moving population. I think this is where my talk will be focusing on, is regarding information as one of the challenges with displacement. Okay. Yes, so as you can see, just a quick, just want to give a quick recap on the crises, the events that unfolded in Mali between 2012 and 2015. 2012 was like really a really terrible year. There was a coup d'etat. Many cities in the north basically fell apart. 2013, the peace talks were going on to try to resolve the situation. There was some military intervention led by the French. It was a coalition to try to help calm down things. Peace talks continued in 2014. At the same time, there was renewed fighting between the rebels and the soldiers. And peace talks continued in 2015. Unfortunately, as we speak, as you all know, the situation in Mali has not really improved substantially. So what we try to do here is knowing that this is a moving population, there's a lot of peace talks going on. Those talks should be informed by evidence, by data. So we try to analyze the impact of the crisis, like starting from 2012, on the internally displaced people. However, we also included the refugees, a subsample of the refugees and those who were returning, like refugees from outside Mali, but also all internally displaced people from within Mali, but going back to their places of origin. So we had three subgroups: the internally displaced, the refugees, and the returnees. So we use information from a face-to-face household survey, as well as follow-up interviews with the same respondents through mobile phones. So this combination basically allows to present, we found that this combination presents a good and robust way to monitor the impact of the conflict, particularly on a population that is really hard to reach and who at times live in areas that are inaccessible by enumerators. By enumerators here, I'm referring to a typical household survey that you send people to go to the field to collect information. So by around mid-2015, we saw that about 500,000 people were displaced because as a result of the crisis, and most of them were internally within Mali. They moved to the south and other parts of Mali, but out of the north. Some also fled the country altogether, mainly to Mauritania, Burkina Faso, Niger. As I mentioned before, a lot of them are moving. They are really mobile. So it's really challenging to collect information on them, to inform, to really have a comprehensive understanding of what their grievances are, although we know, but it's good to hear from the people. If you are holding peace talks, you need to involve all key stakeholders. And one of a core stakeholder is the displaced people, right? So you need to hear, at least understand what their views are. So it's not a typical academic piece of work, but here, at least from the World Bank angle, we're looking at opportunities to really inform policy dialogue. And one of the opportunities that we thought of was using technology, like mobile phone technology. Usage of mobile phones had increased substantially in the continent, including in Mali. So it's okay, let's collect information, combining a baseline survey that was face-to-face with follow-up interviews over the phone. Combining these two types of data allows to really track the crisis first of all, the crisis, but secondly, how it affects this population. I will not go into details of the mobile phone survey, but it was pretty simple. So we set up a simple one where a bunch of interviewers were hired and trained. You see them there in the middle picture, the bottom middle. They were trained, and there was a data entry application that we developed. So a questionnaire was already programmed on the computer. You could even use a tablet if you want. So they post questions, they have the headset on. Now, receive the answers and enter them immediately in the system. So as you can imagine, the data will be almost immediately available. So we did the starting point was to do a face-to-face survey because we needed to go identify this population, collect information about their characteristics and some welfare indicators. And then the second phase is now following up with a monthly interview. There are different ways of collecting information using mobile phones. You could do through SMS, through IVR, USSD, etc., but also live calls, which we thought that it was a no-brainer to use live calls, given the sample, but also given that the live calls. So as I showed you, the call centers that are calling live, it provides an opportunity for the respondent to ask you to clarify the question in case they do not understand it very well. So we thought that was a no-brainer, given that it was a panel survey. Having this human interaction was useful too, to keep this the panel going over the months. So basically, that's how the mobile phone works. And we were, collecting information on a monthly basis, as I mentioned, on a number of indicators. I will show you in a minute. So basically, we're working with a small sample, about 500 individuals. As I said before, the IDPs, refugees, and returnees. And the split was almost even among males and females. And we try to draw the sample randomly. For the IDPs in Bamako, for example, going there, they are identifying where they live. There are some concentration areas where they live. Go there, do some sort of listing, and then based on the listing of the city, draw the sample from there. But it was not only Bamako. We also had Gao and Timbuktu. So we studied 3 main cities in Mali, then refugees in Niger and Mauritania. I will tell you later on how we did not manage to, for political reasons, we did not include Burkina Faso. They didn't allow refugees to provide information on their situation in Bamako. Sorry, on their situation in Burkina Faso. I will skip this. So the questions, we asked questions on several themes, including migration, violence and insecurity, social cohesion, governance, employment, their well-being, but also perceptions of well-being, and so on. And one of the beauties of this approach to data collection is that it's quite flexible. So given that it is a very fluid situation, so you want to be flexible in terms of collecting information on things that emerge that were not preempted, but the things just come up. So we want to be able to collect information on new events that come. So every month, questions were collected on all of these topics, plus we say questions of the month in case something came up during that month. We try to capture that. So I'll provide just a summary of some of the key results. One of the key objectives, as I said before, was to use this tool to collect information that is otherwise not even available at all, to inform dialogue and peace talks, to try to address, that way aim at addressing the crisis in Mali. But we found that some of the results were really interesting. The results indicated that those who were better educated and wealthier households, as well as those who were less exposed to violence, actually fled the crisis, either as IDPs or they went out of the country altogether. So how do we know this? It's because we had we compared this data set with the average population in Mali. So we used a household survey that was already conducted just before this crisis. So we could compare the average Malian, particularly those in the north, those who were in the north, with those who fled the north. So we should, but that is also, I think that makes sense, right? In terms of, it shows that those who were wealthier probably could afford, because it's not just about fleeing, but it comes at a cost as well. So those probably were able to cover the cost of getting themselves out of the place. And maybe those who were better educated also thought that there were better chances for them to find opportunities elsewhere. So they left. But we also found that significant amounts of durable goods, we're talking here of about between 20 to up to 60%, as well as animals, 75 to 90% of animals were lost. And welfare of the displaced declined. So they were lost as a result of the crisis in Mali, which was a shame, but that was what we found. But over time, as we collected this information on a monthly basis, we saw that the impact, since we're tracking the same indicators every single month, the impact was diminishing to the extent that by early 2015, a lot of the children, school-age children, were already going back to school. And some indicators of food insecurity were improving, and they were already getting to levels that they were before the crisis. But two other interesting findings that we uncovered were, one, that the different ethnic groups. So as you may know, even in northern Mali, there are a lot of ethnicities. So we saw that it was typical for different ethnic groups to decide where to seek refuge. So either a group of people from the same ethnic group going to Bamako as this place, people, or some going to Timbuktu or Gao. But also finally, that depending on the location, the narrative of what the crisis, the sources or the root causes of the crisis, as well as the solutions that the people thought should be put in place, was quite different depending on the location where they were. We found this very interesting, and we shared these results with stakeholders, international community, working with the government and the rebels to try to work out something as solutions. So this was one of the impacts of this work that we did was, as I said before, this was a hard to reach group. So finding an innovative way to collect information to guide or inform the peace talks, which was really a useful contribution of this project. The final slide here, I just wanted to also show that it was not all rosy. It was challenging. So this approach, any panel survey, one key risk is non-response or attrition. This is even more important or more relevant for a panel phone survey. If it was a face-to-face survey, you may try to find a way to convince the respondent to answer. To answer you, but over the phone, if they do not pick up the call, there's nothing you can do. So we try to find ways to minimize. We put quite a few things in place to try to minimize attrition and non-response. Phone network coverage was also one issue too. But we work with a local firm. And that really made a difference, right? Their understanding of the local context was really invaluable. So as a result of many things that we put in place, the list is long. I will not want to go through this. Maybe we cover through the Q&A. But one of it was just to basically hand out a form to someone. As I said, we selected the respondents randomly. So that means that there was a chance that some will be drawn into the sample who do not own mobile phones. So that is a tool for them to participate in the study. So if they do not have that tool, it means they automatically drop out. So we handed out mobile phones. That was one way. and so many other things. We provided an incentive. I think it was roughly equivalent to about $1 each month, not paying them, but it was just to say thank you in the form of airtime credit. But we also figured out that an additional benefit of transferring airtime credit to respondents was that it meant that their phone lines were open. Because as you may know, in many African countries, including Mali, phone usage is typically like prepaid. You have to put money to use it. And sometimes if you do not put any credit on the phone for about 90 days, your number becomes deactivated. So by transferring this airtime credit to say thank you for your continuous participation in the study, also meant that their phone lines were always open, even for those who normally would not afford to put credit on their phones. Okay, so I will end there for now in terms of the challenges. We can cover the other details later on. So let me just quickly summarize some of what I've said in French. Bear with me, my French is not as good. I will just try it a little bit. Ce papier analyse l'impact de la crise de 2012 au Mali sur les personnes déplacées internes, les réfugiés et les personnes retournées. Il est basé sur des informations reculées à travers une enquête en face à face auprès des ménages, ainsi que des entretiens de suivi réalisés par téléphone portable auprès des répondants de l'enquête. Cette combinaison s'avère être une bonne et robuste manière de suivre l'impact du conflit sur les populations. Difficile à atteindre, qui vivent parfois dans des zones inaccessibles aux recenseurs. Les résultats indiqués, ce sont les ménages les plus instruits et les plus riches, ainsi que ceux qui sont exposés à moins de violences qui sont sur la crise. D'importantes quantités de biens durables et des animaux ont été perdus. Le bien-être des déplacés s'est considérablement détérioré à la suite de la crise. Pourtant, sans l'impact des minés avec le temps, au début de 2015, la plupart des enfants éligibles partant à l'école. Le niveau des emplois et le nombre de repas consommés par jour étant revenu au niveau d'avant la crise. Le papier constate que l'appartenance éthique et une influence sur les destinations choisies pour se réfugier. Les cris de la crise et les solutions envisagent différents diamétralement d'une lieu de autre. Sorry, my French. I was just trying to summarize what I was saying, but I hope you try to grasp it a little bit. I would pause there for now. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Alvin. It's a very exciting and insightful presentation. Thank you so much. So, participants, now it's your time to ask questions. You can either write your questions in the chat function, or you can also raise your hands so that you will be given the opportunity to ask questions. Thank you very much. Yeah, Josephine, please.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your presentations. Really interesting. Germain, I would like to ask you a question, if that's okay. I'll do it in English and then I'll just say it in French as well. But yeah, I was wondering if your work on the right to water is something that's, I mean, I assume that in your work, it's quite limited to the legal realm and kind of the legal instruments that will be able to guarantee this right. But I wanted to ask if you're aware of maybe the more bottom-up and civil society activism around this. So are there groups that are trying to guarantee this right in a more practical sense? Is there sort of, what is the practical side to the legal regime that needs to be adopted or respected? Maybe in the Burkinabe context, I don't know, or if you have a preference. Alors la question c'est, Germain, il parle plutôt du droit à l'eau comme un instrument légal. Et je me demande s'il y a en même temps une dynamique de la société civile ou des organisations, peut-être au Burkina ou dans d'autres contextes, qui essaient de garantir ce droit ou qui essaient de lancer des efforts pour garantir ce droit en réalité et pas, ce qui ne se limite pas peut-être aux instruments légaux. Merci.
Thank you very much, Josephine, for your interesting question. So maybe I could address this issue, but due to the fact that the presentation is so limited, I go directly to some key points, and this has the consequence to let away this aspect of the contribution or the potential contribution of the civil society to the fulfillment of the right to water or something right to sanitation or to health. So I think as we have a notice in our articles, Benjamin and I, there is also some initiatives from the civil society which could be considered as a really great contribution to the fulfillment of the right to water for the internally displaced person in the case of Burkina Faso, and maybe in the case also of Niger. For example, we have some civil societies like associations and also NGO, which try to collect some funds and to buy water and to what can I say, and other goods or assets for the internally displaced person. So this is a sporadic action, but we can say that it contributes also to the fulfillment based on the voluntary action of the civil society. This is not it is not a legal obligation for the civil society to ensure the protection of the right to water for internally displaced persons. But this obligation maybe exists morally, but not legal obligation for them to do it. This is maybe if you want to reason, like maybe an extension of obligation to assist people in suffering. They try to do it. And so maybe, for example, there is an association called Alliance pour l'environnement et les droits humains. I'm part of this association, and I'm founder also of this. We try to collect some funds, and we had bought many things like pack of water and other things, and we try to give it to internal displaced in Kaya, because we made a delegation and we observe that children and women, because the needs about water and sanitation is a more crucial for women and children, and we have made the remark that there is a real lack, and we try also to contribute in a humanitarian way, not on a legal basis. So these kind of initiatives exist. Maybe I might make a map for the contribution of NGO and association in this sense. Unfortunately, I didn't, and I'm sure that maybe Daniel Oloku, who is more practical than me, could also try to add something which could try to complete the answer I've just given to you. Thank you very much. Je ne sais pas si je dois répondre aussi en français.
Thank you so much. There's another question in the chat box. This is forwarded to Josephine. So Galila asks you, are you aware of specific practices of solidarity in Burkinabe communities, and if they include Maine? This is her question to Josephine.
Thank you, Galila. Yeah, so the one example that I kind of came across in displaced communities, and this is something that Mariam Sabadogo talked about as well. So my research was basically based on interviews with different practitioners, UN, NGOs in Burkina, because there is basically no research available on internal displacement in Burkina, or there wasn't really, especially in English a year ago, because it's such a recent situation. And she talked about displaced women setting up organizations, self-help organizations on campsites. And she talked about them, for instance, kind of building an organization with like a chairperson and a person who's in charge of the financial affairs, and they hold elections, and sometimes they also organize kind of a small business on the campsite, so maybe they sell a few things, or maybe sell food, or kind of self-organize to support each other. And what she said is that the indirect effect of that is also that, for instance, if one of these women has an issue at home with her husband or with someone else in her family, then being part of such a self-help organization might indirectly protect her, because there are kind of other women like looking out and knowing about what's going on. So it's helpful in a formal sense, because these women kind of actively support each other in a financial way and organize things and take decisions together. But it's also helpful in an indirect way, because it might reduce sexual gender-based violence, or it might make it easier to talk about that with other women, kind of in informal settings, when you have a chat while you're trying to sell something. So she talked about those organizations in the context of internally displaced person camps. And she didn't, or like I didn't really come across examples kind of feminist groups, for instance, or women's rights groups that work across gender divides, but I am very, very sure that those exist. It's just that the research was limited, and in the context of internally displaced persons, this is something that was highlighted especially on campsites. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Josephine, and thank you, Galila, for your question.
Gabi,
please go on.
Yeah. Thanks so much. We have a participant. Nous avons une participante, Madame Diko, qui travaille sur les questions de l'accès à l'identité juridique au Mali. Elle est présidente d'une ONG. Elle travaille pour que les enfants et les femmes puissent avoir droit à la documentation civile. Donc, Madame Diko, si vous voulez partager votre expérience ou faire un commentaire, on peut vous donner la parole.
Thank you. So I also have a minor question for Daniel.
Oh, sorry, Abi.
Yes.
Sorry. I think Daniel was suggesting that someone who wrote something on the chat, Madame Diko, may be able to join the panel. So Alphonse could you maybe invite Wendiko to join the panel?
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, this is exactly no. This is because not all the people in the panel speak French, so we have to like translate from time to time. But yeah,
answering in French.
Of course. Perfect. Merci. Thank you.
Voilà, on va faire entrer Madame Diko et elle va partager son expérience.
Has she joined us? He or she?
She.
Let me know when she joins us.
Est-ce que Madame Diko, vous êtes là? Est-ce que,
au fait, il pleut ici.
D'accord.
D'accord. Donc, du coup, avec la vidéo, c'est un peu sombre.
OK.
Bonsoir. Je suis Koulibaly Mourzal, la coordinatrice de l'ONG Amber Concours, qui est la lutte pour la maltraitance de la femme, et de l'enfant. Donc, actuellement, c'est moi qui représente Madame Diko sur ce Zoom, vu qu'elle est un peu occupée aujourd'hui avec d'autres réunions. Comme M. Daniel l'a si bien dit, d'expliquer nos différentes expériences. Actuellement, nous sommes sur des actes de naissance, de Bougouni. Du coup, on fait des RAVEC également, des actes de naissance des enfants de 0 à 14 ans. Vous me recevez?
Oui, on vous reçoit.
D'accord. Donc, l'expérience dont nous avons tiré durant tous ces parcours, on voit qu'au Mali, ici, les gens sont dans les besoins des actes de naissance. Parce que durant nos différents recensements, on constate qu'il y a plein d'enfants qui sont sans acte. Et c'est vraiment quelque chose qui fait mal de voir un enfant privé de son droit, qui n'a pas quelque chose à laquelle dont il a droit depuis son bas âge. Et ça fait vraiment mal. Donc, c'est l'une de nos raisons pour laquelle nous, on se bat pour que chaque enfant puisse avoir quelque chose qu'il mérite dans cette société.
OK. Merci beaucoup, madame, pour votre participation. Et comme vous l'avez dit, effectivement, la question de l'accès des enfants aux documents d'état civil est une question cruciale, et vous l'avez mentionné, comme je l'avais aussi dit auparavant. Donc, ce qu'on demande, c'est que des mesures soient prises pour que ces enfants-là ne soient pas laissés à leur compte, mais pour que les organisations humanitaires, en conjugaison avec les efforts du gouvernement, puissent arriver à prendre en charge la question de l'accès à l'identité juridique pour ces enfants. Donc, merci.
Je vous en prie.
So we have another question from Monica. I think that all the panelists can see the question and try to answer. And she said, do you see realistic chances for repatriation for legal improvements? So I would like to answer the question. Yes, there is a chance because we want the Malian government to have a closer look on this situation, because the national legal framework does not offer any remedy for repatriated children who came back from the refugee countries, from the foreign countries, to have access to the civil documentation. There is no remedy for that. And we noticed that many children came back without any document. So this is a concern. To address this, the government can take a political decision to say that, okay, those who came back from foreign countries, okay, we can grant them civil documentation. This is a political decision. Or they can put it on the law. This is why we are asking for the domestication, the transposition of the Kampala Convention into the domestic legal framework. And we know that the government has signed a tripartite agreement with UNHCR and also with the host countries. But in this agreement, the government said that they will provide civil documentation for children born in Mali before fleeing in the host countries. But they did not consider the issue of those who were born in the foreign countries. This is the situation. So only a legal framework, a new law can address this issue. And maybe the UNHCR that is really partnering with the government should advocate for those category of children born in foreign countries who came in Mali without any documents. Another issue is that those who were born here, those who were born in the foreign countries, came back without any documentation, those who came with civil documentation, because that the research find that some of them came with documents. By the law, ask those people to go to the special center to harmonize, to validate the documents. But the issue that all those people are in the northern areas, and it's difficult for them to come in the town. There is only a special center in Bamako. So those people do not have means to travel to Bamako in order to validate the birth certificate that were granted by the host country. So there are many issues, and we advocate and we recommend necessary steps to adopt a new legal framework, a new law that will address the specific issue of IDPs or repatriates. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Jermaine, your hand is up.
Okay. Thank you very much. I just want maybe to complete and answer the first step of the question of Monica Ashman related to what kind of means do you all see for the future improvement of the internal displaced person situation? I think when we see the international legal framework, the problem these instruments deal with is not only the protection, it is also the assistance. So we can see two pillars of the regime. And the two pillars of the regime mean that when it is impossible to prevent the internal displacement of these persons, regardless of the causes of the displacement, we have to activate, maybe in a situation of rehabilitation or not, the other pillar is assistance. And so the key question will an issue is depends on as Daniel said, the the content of the domestication of the international legal system in the national legal framework. If, for example, if you take the rule of law of Niger, this rule of law is, for me, it is really clear because the applicable regime this law, this rule defines is a very broader rule. Defines is a very broader and includes assistance, even the situation resulting for the internal displacement is not war or humanitarian crisis situation. This means that if the situation may be result from the climate change situation, for example, this means that they can try to find some remedies by giving to the internally displaced population another land, maybe for agriculture or maybe for other things to survive by producing other sources of means of survival. So for me, yes, I agree with Daniel that it depends on the political decision. But sometimes maybe when the government decide to domesticate or to internalize international instrument, it will again and maybe depend also on the content, what they put on the document. In the case of Burkina Faso, we have only a rule of orientation. Nothing is clear. The instruments just have a sort, we can try to qualify it as a soft law. So the obligation of the state is not so precise. And in this situation, we cannot be predictive than what the instrument itself says. So maybe the best thing to do is to prevent as they can internal displacement. If not, I don't think that there are any situation to be taken into account to improve if this situation don't come mostly from the political policymakers.
Thank you very much. This is really insightful.
I'd like to say a few words on what Dabire said.
All right, please.
Non, Dabire, je suis totalement d'accord avec toi. Alors, la loi dont tu parles, la loi sur la prévention et la gestion des catastrophes naturelles du Burkina Faso, adoptée en 2014, constitue une avancée vers la protection, vers la prise en compte des questions humanitaires. C'est un pas vers la prise en compte des questions humanitaires. Mais quand on regarde la loi, elle ne règle pas fondamentalement les spécificités liées au déplacement forcé. Elle a ses lignes. Parce qu'en 2014, bon, les gens ne s'imaginaient pas qu'il va y avoir un déplacement forcé. Bon, c'était les petites crises. Les gens ont vu ça, dit, bon, attends, on va prendre une loi pour qu'en cas de catastrophe naturelle, en cas de crise humanitaire, bon, on puisse gérer avec. Mais ce n'est pas le déplacement forcé. Alors, voilà pourquoi ici au Burkina Faso, je suis actuellement au Burkina Faso, nous demandons la domestication de la loi. Il y a un processus qui a débuté depuis 2020 et c'était bien avancé, mais avec le coup d'État, il y a eu un arrêt. Mais ils continuent de demander la domestication de cette loi parce que le gouvernement de transition actuel a décidé d'être plus proche, d'adresser les questions humanitaires, d'apporter une réponse aux questions humanitaires. Alors, ce que nous disons, moi je viens d'écrire un autre document, hein, c'est qu'on ne peut pas adresser les questions humanitaires sans une base juridique, sans une loi. C'est la loi qui doit pouvoir régir tout ça. Donc, nous demandons, si le gouvernement dit, bon, OK, moi je vais m'occuper des questions humanitaires, on demande la loi. Parce que c'est la loi qui va régir la réponse. Voilà. Au Mali, il n'y a pas encore cette loi. Il y a eu des tentatives en 2019, ils ont pris quelque chose, mais ce n'est pas la domestication de la Convention de Kampala. Le Mali et le Burkina Faso ont ratifié la Convention de Kampala, et la Convention de Kampala donne des orientations, notamment sur l'accès à la documentation civile, sur un certain nombre de choses, sur l'aspect de la protection, que tu l'as dit, sur l'aspect de l'assistance des personnes déplacées. Il y a des spécificités que, évidemment, les États doivent pouvoir prendre en compte selon la situation qui prévaut dans les pays pour prendre une loi spécifique. Le Niger l'a déjà fait. Salutations spéciales pour le Niger, qui a déjà domestiqué la Convention de Kampala. C'est une avancée et nous souhaitons que le Mali et le Burkina Faso puissent domestiquer cette loi, parce que la crise dans ces deux pays, elle est complexe et elle est assez grave pour ne pas qu'il y ait un instrument qui puisse régir. Parce que les instruments que nous utilisons aujourd'hui ne peuvent pas répondre. Moi, j'ai parlé de la commission du code des personnes de la famille, qui apporte des réponses, qui dit qu'un enfant qui est né à l'étranger doit aller à l'ambassade ou bien doit faire son document dans la mairie du pays où il est né. Ça, c'est en temps normal, parce que c'est normal, là. C'est en temps normal. Mais en temps de crise, cette loi ne colle pas. Cette loi ne colle pas. Voilà pourquoi nous demandons une loi spécifique ou une décision politique qui peut être transitoire. We have questions.
I'm sorry. There are two questions in the chat box. One is directed to Alvin. It relates to the accuracy of the data collected through mobile phones. If you could answer this in 1.5 minutes or maximum 2 minutes, it would be great. Alvin, please.
Thank you so much for the question. It's really important. I think so we've conducted a separate study to comparing data collected through phones and data collected face-to-face. But this study, as I said before, there was a baseline survey that was done on a face-to-face basis. So that also provided us opportunity. We're collecting the same information on the same topics, and some of the variables do not change so rapidly. So we're able to show that, for example, household assets between the baseline and the first round of phone surveys, they were pretty the same. There was not much difference. But there were some other indicators that you don't expect to change over 2 months or so. So we use that to prove that the quality of the information collected over the phone was good. But there's a lot of literature in this area as well, comparing data collected over the phone and face-to-face. So, but it's an important question, because if you do not put a lot of things in place, everything can be screwed up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alvin, for the quick answer. So the other question directed to Daniel is, how does the regulation of registration fees help advance or promote the registration of child IDPs if the customization of the Kampala Convention and implementation of existing law to protect IDPs hangs on the balance?
Thank you, Alphonse, for your question. Let me say that actually there is no registration fee for those who comply with the rule. So before the 30 days, if you want to register your baby, this is free of charge. This is free. There's nothing special to do. If you register at the F Center and you follow the process, free of charge in Mali. But the fee starts when you violate the rule, the 30-day rule for declaration of your baby. So this is a fee kind of sanction. for mothers or for caregivers who fail to comply with the law. This is normal. When you refuse to comply with the law, there is sanction. This is the kind of sanction. But it is not a kind of violation in all the cases. In a displacement situation, this cannot be analyzed or seen as a violation of the law, because actually there is no facility near the villages to proceed with the declaration and go through there with the registration process. And regarding the volatile environment, the mother within the 30 days cannot go, or the father go in the town for registration purposes. This is another issue. This is why we say that the law that is in place, the law that is regulating somehow displacement, is not adapted. So the legislature cannot impose fees to the parents who fail. But the question that we have, why the parents fail? Are there registration offices close to the village where the child is born? And we know that many facilities have been looted by armed groups. So this is the situation. So this is a fact. So based on that, we are requesting a law that could regulate this issue. And I think that one of the major issues that these fees are not harmonized. The tribunals or the mayor office can, there is no harmonization of the costs. You have $2, $3, $12, and $30 based on the region where you are. This is a problem. So if the rulers or the legislature can do something by saying that, okay, of course, this can be considered as a sanction, but the fee is $3, for instance, and the legislature, the local authorities can monitor this implementation of this rule. It will be somehow fine. Yeah. So it does not promote the Kampala Convention. The Kampala Convention does not request any fee for registration in case of displacement. And what we request, maybe they can harmonize. And we strongly requested to the state officials to adopt a moratorium that the aid workers develop so that they can assist by lifting the supplement judgment procedure for those who fail to register in the 30 days. So we lift this procedure, and children can directly apply to a birth certificate at the mayor office. This is what we are also requesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for the excellent answer. Thank you, everyone, for the very wonderful presentations, and all the attendees for your participation. Thank you very much. I would like to say thank you. So we have already used our time. Thank you, and bye-bye.